had kindly driven my neighbor's son to and from school for a whole year. After his final grades came out, she showed up with her entire family, blocking my garage. She slapped a claim for $15,000 into my hand, pointed a finger at my nose and yelled, "My son was a genius. But your crappy car jolted his brain so bad it's ruined. You're not leaving this garage until you pay up." I stared at the familiar official seal on the claim form and let out a cold laugh. She had no idea that the owner of that assessment center was my uncle. Not only that, I also knew the real reason her son's grades plummeted. She'd taken $5,000 meant for his tutoring and spent it all on tipping a sexy male streamer. Trying to extort me? I'm about to make you lose everything you have and leave you with nothing. The underground garage was dimly lit, reeking of a musty smell that never saw sunlight. I'd just parked my car in my designated spot and hadn't even unbuckled my seatbelt when three figures suddenly darted out from behind a supporting pillar nearby. They surrounded my car, blocking the front and cutting off all my exits. Leading the charge was my dear neighbor, Brenda Hayes. She was wearing a full face of makeup today, her lipstick a dark, bold shade, her feet clad in 4-inch stilettos, and in her hand, she clutched a stack of stark white papers. Trailing behind her were her husband, David Hayes, who usually greeted everyone with a smile but now had a grim expression, and her mother-in-law, Martha Hayes, notorious in the neighborhood for being an absolute pain. "Sophia Miller, get out of that car right now." Brenda's shrill voice exploded in the empty garage, echoing piercingly and making my eardrums ache. I frowned, not getting out immediately. Instead, I lowered my window halfway and stared at her coldly. "Brenda, what the hell is wrong with you, yelling like this so late at night?" "What's wrong with me?" Brenda let out an exaggerated, cold laugh, storming closer to my car window. She raised her hand and slapped the stack of papers against my windshield with a loud smack. "Open your eyes and look at what you've done. My perfectly fine son, you utterly ruined him." Martha, seeing this, immediately scurried closer. Her bony fingers, dry like tree branches, almost poked through the window gap and into my nose. "You evil, cold-hearted woman. We trusted you so much, letting you drive our Leo every day. What were your intentions? Do you hate that you can't have kids, so you're jealous of our Leo's intelligence and deliberately messed with him on the road?" I took a deep breath, suppressing the anger surging in my chest, pushed open the car door and stepped out. On the windshield, the white A4 paper was almost blinding. The bold, enlarged title at the top screamed, as if desperate for attention. Asterisk, compensation details for brain nerve damage and intellectual developmental delay caused by prolonged vehicle jolting. Asterisk. I looked at that line of text and laughed, enraged. Reaching out, I yanked the paper off and scanned it under the garage's dim light. The categories listed were even more detailed than a hospital bill. One-time compensation for intellectual damage, $7,000. Parental emotional distress, $3,000. Follow-up brain rehabilitation and nutrition costs, $2,000. Lost future prospects from failing to get into an elite prep school, $3,000. The last line was heavily circled in red. Total, $15,000. I looked up at Brenda's face, slightly twisted from extreme agitation. $15,000? Brenda, are you trying to extort me, or are you just dreaming in broad daylight? Brenda crossed her arms, chin held high, looking smug, as if she had me cornered. Extortion? Sophia, don't you dare make baseless accusations. It's all in black and white. This is an official assessment from the most authoritative professional institution in the state. Our Leo used to get perfect scores on every test. He was an absolute prodigy. But ever since he started riding in your clunky car, getting jolted around every day, now his final exam results are out, and he got a D in math. A D. Can you believe it? The doctor even said it's because of long-term violent jolting, causing severe attention deficit and irreversible brain nerve damage. If you don't pay up, you're not taking another step out of this garage today. In the garage, quite a few neighbors who had just gotten home from work had stopped. Some rolled down their car windows, peeking out to watch the drama. Others simply turned off their engines and stood a short distance away, pointing and whispering. Brenda, seeing the crowd grow, seemed to gain instant confidence. Her voice soared even higher, turning into a full-blown theatrical performance. "Everyone, judge for yourselves. I was kind enough to let her take my child along the way, and she, in turn, drove like a maniac, scrambling my son's brain. Now his future is ruined, and she won't even say sorry, trying to avoid paying." A few hushed whispers immediately rose from the crowd. Wow, can a car ride really mess up someone's brain? Never heard of that. Who knows, kids these days are so delicate. But driving someone else's kid, it really does seem like no good deed goes unpunished. You just can't be a good Samaritan anymore. $15,000. Sophia's really unlucky to end up with a neighbor like this. David chimed in at the right moment, his face stern, feigning reasonableness and concern for the bigger picture. "Sophia, we're all neighbors in the building. We see each other every day. We don't want to make things too ugly, and we definitely don't want to go to court. But this situation, it's clearly all your fault. Just pay the $15,000 without a fuss, and we'll pretend nothing happened. We can still say hello when we see each other. Friends. Say hello? I looked at this utterly hypocritical trio. A wave of nausea churning in my stomach. This entire year, how much had I helped their family? Rain or shine, if Brenda said, I'm getting my hair done, I'll be late, can you wait a bit longer? I'd have to wait for Leo in the cold outside the school for half an hour. Leo would eat messy cookies and drink sticky sodas in my car, leaving crumbs and spills everywhere, and I never said a harsh word. I just quietly paid to get the car detailed myself. Now because her son isn't studying, his grades dropped, and they blame it on my car being too bumpy, damaging his brain? I lowered my gaze, looking at the so-called compensation details again. My eyes slowly moved down, finally landing on the blue stamp in the bottom right corner. Blue Sky Children's Development Assessment Center. I paused. Then an irrepressible cold smirk curved my lips. Blue Sky Assessment Center? What a coincidence. The big boss behind this institution was none other than my uncle, Richard Miller. I had just been to his office last month, enjoying some excellent coffee. At the time, he was complaining to me that too many people were counterfeiting their institution's official seal to scam people, severely damaging their reputation. Their legal department was about to team up with the police for a large-scale arrest. Brenda, seeing me smile at the stamp, thought I was stunned into silence. She advanced triumphantly. What? What are you laughing at? Nothing to say, huh? Sophia, I advise you to pay up quickly. Otherwise, I'll post this in the residents' Snapchat group and the school parents group. I'll let everyone know what a cold-blooded, heartless person you are. I slowly folded the paper and calmly slipped it into my designer bag. All right. Brenda froze, seemingly unprepared for my reaction. What did you say? I looked at her, every word clear and forceful. I said all right. Post it wherever you want, go viral if you wish. But Brenda, I'm making myself clear right here and right now. I won't give you a single cent, not a single dime of that $15,000. Not only will I not pay, but I'll make you pay a price you can't afford for this worthless piece of paper. With that, I got back into my car, and slammed the door shut with a bang. I started the engine, shifted into gear, and floored the accelerator. The 300 horsepower engine instantly let out a beastly roar, and the tires screeched against the epoxy floor of the underground garage. David and Martha shrieked, their faces pale, scrambling to hide behind a nearby pillar. Brenda, retreating too quickly in her high heels, twisted her ankle and fell hard on the ground. Her perfectly made-up face instantly contorted in pain. I rolled down my window, coldly tossing out a warning. If you're not afraid to die, keep blocking my car with your body. Then, I swerved the steering wheel, my car brushing past their clothes as I drove away. In my rearview mirror, Brenda frantically picked herself up from the ground, pointing and cursing at my taillights like a complete banshee. I activated my car's Bluetooth and called Mr. Jenkins, the property manager. Mr. Jenkins, Underground Garage Zone B, Spot 102. Someone was causing trouble and blocking my vehicle. Please immediately retrieve the last 10 minutes of surveillance footage and preserve it exactly as is. If a single second is missing, I'll hold you accountable. Hanging up, I took a deep breath of the cool air in the car. The war had just begun. The heavy iron gates of the underground garage creaked shut behind me, blocking out the muffled shouts of Brenda Hayes. I parked my car in a temporary spot near the exit, my hands gripping the steering wheel as my heart hammered against my ribs, not out of fear, but from a cold, simmering fury. I reached into my designer bag, pulled out the folded compensation details document, and laid it across the passenger seat. Under the bright LED dome light of my car, the forged blue seal of the Blue Sky Children's Development Assessment Center practically glowed with arrogance. I took out my phone and dialed a familiar number. It rang twice before a deep, authoritative voice answered. Sophia? It's late. Is everything all right? Uncle Richard, I said, keeping my voice remarkably level. I'm sorry to bother you this late, but I need you to look at something. What is it? I'm sending you a photo right now. I snapped a crisp, high-resolution picture of the document, ensuring the blue stamp and the signature at the bottom were perfectly legible, and hit send. A neighbor of mine just handed this to me. She's demanding $15,000, claiming my car's suspension is so bad it caused her son irreversible brain nerve damage and intellectual developmental delay. This is the official assessment she's using to extort me. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the rustle of papers as Richard Miller, the founder and majority shareholder of Blue Sky, likely zoomed in on the image on his tablet. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped an octave, dripping with absolute displeasure. This is an absolute mockery, Richard growled. The registration number on this certificate, 004982, belongs to a standard speech therapy assessment we issued 3 years ago for a toddler. And that signature? Dr. Eris Thorne? He hasn't worked at our state branch in over 18 months. This is a forged seal, Sophia. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. I figured as much. She claimed she got it from the most authoritative professional institution in the state. She was very proud of it. I am calling our legal department first thing in the morning, Richard said, his tone sharpening. We have been hunting down the source of these counterfeit certificates for months. They are ruining our reputation. I'll have the police at her door by noon. No, Uncle Richard, wait, I countered quickly. If you send the police now, she'll just claim she was a victim too. She'll say some third-party consultant scammed her and sold her a fake certificate. She'll play the clueless, desperate mother, and she might get off with a slap on the wrist. Richard paused. What do you propose? Let her use it, I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. She threatened to post this in the neighborhood group chat and the school parents forum. He wants to destroy my reputation to force me to pay. Let her dig her own grave. Once she publishes this forged document publicly to demand money from me, it's no longer just a fake piece of paper. It's active, high-value extortion and public defamation. When the trap springs, I want to make sure she has absolutely no way out. On the other end of the line, I heard my uncle let out a slow, appreciative chuckle. You always did have your father's mind for strategy, Sophia. Fine. We'll play it your way. My legal team will prepare the paperwork quietly. The moment she takes this public, we strike. Thank you, Uncle. I'll keep you updated. I hung up, leaning back against the leather seat. I could already feel the pieces falling into place. But a forged document was only half of the ammunition I needed. I needed to address the root of Brenda's desperation, the real reason her son Leo's grades had plummeted, and why she suddenly needed $15,000 so badly. The truth about Brenda's finances hadn't fallen into my lap by accident. It had started 3 weeks ago, on what seemed like a completely normal Tuesday. I had been driving Leo home from his after-school program. Usually the 10-year-old was energetic, constantly kicking the back of my passenger seat and demanding snacks. But that afternoon, he had been uncharacteristically quiet, staring out the window with tear-rimmed eyes. Hey Leo, I had asked, glancing at him through the rearview mirror. What's wrong? Did something happen at school? Leo snuffled, wiping his nose with his sleeve. Mom said I can't go to the elite Math Academy summer program anymore. She said we're too poor. I had frowned. Just the week before, I had overheard David Hayes boasting to another neighbor in the lobby about how he had finally scraped together the $5,000 tuition deposit to secure Leo a spot at the academy, hoping to prep him for the state scholarship exams. David was a hard-working, mid-level accountant who practically lived at his office, desperately trying to provide a better future for his son. Are you sure, Leo? I asked gently. Maybe she just meant she hadn't paid it yet. No. Leo had insisted, his voice cracking with childhood frustration. I heard her talking on her iPad in the kitchen. She was laughing and saying she needed to cancel the enrollment to get the refund. But then right after, she was watching that fitness guy on the screen, the one she always watches when Dad is at work. She kept tapping the screen, sending him those giant digital rocket ships. The screen kept flashing, Goddess Brenda has gifted a super rocket. Over and over again. A super rocket on VibeLive, a popular streaming platform, cost exactly $500. That conversation had sparked my curiosity. A few days later, while helping Brenda carry a heavy delivery box up the stairs, I caught a glimpse of her iPad screen resting on the kitchen counter. It was open to VibeLive. Her username was clearly visible at the top, Brenda_loves_life. That evening, I had downloaded the app and searched for her profile. It didn't take long to find her favorite creator, Jax_fit, a 20-something personal trainer with bleached hair, heavily filtered abs, and an incredibly flirtatious streaming persona. When I looked at the top contributor leaderboard for his channel, Brenda_loves_life was proudly sitting at number 1. She had gifted him over a dozen super rockets and hundreds of love hearts over the past month alone. She hadn't lost the tutoring money. She had actively stolen it from her own son's future to buy the fleeting attention of a boy toy on the internet. And now that Leo's final grades had come out, exposing the fact that he had failed to prepare for the exams without the academy's help, she was in a blind panic. She couldn't let David find out she had squandered the money. If he discovered the truth, his quiet, hard-working demeanor would shatter, and he would likely file for divorce. Brenda needed $15,000 immediately, $5,000 to replace the stolen tuition, and another $10,000 to keep her lavish, stay-at-home lifestyle afloat before David noticed the missing savings. and I was her chosen scapegoat. You picked the wrong target, Brenda, I whispered to the empty car. By 7 o'clock the next morning, my phone was buzzing relentlessly on my nightstand. I rolled over, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and picked it up. The notification screen was flooded with alerts from the building's residents group chat on Snapchat, as well as several direct messages from mutual acquaintances. I unlocked the phone and opened the group. At the top of the chat was a lengthy, emotionally charged post by Brenda Hayes. Brenda_H. Warning to all parents in the building. I am absolutely heartbroken and devastated to share this. For the past year, I trusted my neighbor, Sophia Miller, Unit 402, to drive my sweet boy Leo to school. I thought she was being a good Samaritan, but instead, she used her sports car to drive like an absolute psychopath, violently jolting my son day after day. Yesterday, we received his final grades and a devastating medical diagnosis. Leo has suffered irreversible brain nerve damage and developmental delays due to the constant, violent shaking of her vehicle. When we tried to confront her peacefully in the garage last night, she attacked us. She almost ran over my elderly mother-in-law, Martha, and left me injured on the floor before speeding away. She is refusing to take responsibility or pay a single cent for Leo's medical rehabilitation. Please protect your children and keep them away from this dangerous, heartless woman. Attached 3 photos. The attached photos were calculated. The first was a shot of the forged blue sky assessment, specifically highlighting the phrase intellectual developmental delay caused by prolonged vehicle jolting. The second was a close-up of Brenda's ankle, which had a faint, barely visible red mark on it. The third was a photo of my car's license plate. The chat was already in an uproar. Unit_305_Sarah. Oh my goodness, Brenda. This is horrific. Is Leo okay? I can't believe Sophia would act like this. Unit_512_Marcus. Wait, can a car ride actually cause brain damage? That sounds crazy. But running people over in the garage? That's a police matter. Unit_201_Martha_H. It is true. My heart is still pounding. She looked me right in the eye and accelerated. We could have died. Sophia Miller is a monster. My lips curled into a cold sneer as I read through the messages. She had actually done it. She had published the forged document and made the extortion public. A few seconds later, my phone screen changed. An incoming call from David Hayes. I answered it, putting it on speaker. Sophia. David's voice came through, sounding strained, playing the role of the reasonable mediator. I hope you've seen the group chat. Brenda is hysterical, and my mother's blood pressure is dangerously high after what you did last night. This is getting completely out of hand. Is it, David? I asked, my voice dripping with mock curiosity. Because from where I'm sitting, your wife is committing libel. Sophia, please let's be realistic, David sighed heavily. Nobody wants to drag this to court. The neighborhood is already talking. If this gets back to your employer, it could ruin your career. I'm trying to help you here. If you just transfer the $15,000 to Brenda's account today, I will personally make sure she deletes the posts and tells everyone it was a misunderstanding. We can put this behind us. You're trying to help me? I let out a dry, sharp laugh. David, you're an accountant. You should know better than to negotiate on behalf of a criminal. Tell your wife she has 24 hours to enjoy her little online circus. Because when I shut it down, she's going to wish she had never learned my name. Sophia, don't be unreasonable. I hung up, cutting him off mid-sentence. I immediately opened my email and drafted a message to Mr. Jenkins, the property manager. Mr. Jenkins, pursuant to my request last night, please email me the high-definition surveillance footage from Zone B, Spot 102, covering the time frame of 8:15 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. Please ensure the file is unedited and contains the original timestamp. This is required for an active police investigation. Best, Sophia Miller. Within 5 minutes, a download link appeared in my inbox. Mr. Jenkins, terrified of being held liable, had complied instantly. I downloaded the file and played it on my laptop. The footage was crystal clear. It showed my car parked perfectly. It showed Brenda, David, and Martha jumping out from behind the pillar, aggressively surrounding my vehicle. It showed Martha thrusting her fingers toward my window. And most importantly, it showed the moment I drove away. I had steered the car slowly and carefully around them. There was at least 3 feet of clearance between my fender and Brenda. The video captured Brenda watching my car drive off, taking 2 steps backward, carefully kicking off her own high-heeled shoes, and then dramatically dropping herself onto the concrete floor, rubbing her ankle with a theatrical grimace. It was a masterclass in insurance fraud. I saved the video to an external drive, labeled it Exhibit A, and sent a copy to my uncle's legal team. Now that I had the physical evidence of their fraud, it was time to gather the final piece of the puzzle, the concrete proof of Brenda's financial deception. I grabbed my keys, slipped on a light trench coat, and drove to the Elite Math Academy, located in an upscale commercial district about 15 minutes away. The academy was quiet, the lobby smelling of freshly waxed floors and expensive educational materials. A polite young woman behind the front desk looked up as I approached. "Welcome to Elite Math. How can I help you today?" "Hi," I said, putting on my best worried family member expression. "I'm Sophia. I'm Leo Hayes' aunt. His parents, Brenda and David, have been under a lot of stress lately, and there was some confusion about his summer enrollment. I wanted to check if his deposit of $5,000 went through, or if there's an outstanding balance I can help settle for them." The receptionist looked sympathetic and tapped quickly on her keyboard. "Let me check that for you. Yes, Leo Hayes. Oh, actually it looks like the enrollment was canceled." "Canceled?" I feigned shock. "But I thought his father paid the deposit last month." "He did," the receptionist confirmed, lowering her voice slightly. "But on May 12th, Mrs. Brenda Hayes called our office. She stated that the family was facing sudden financial difficulties and requested a full refund of the $5,000 deposit. Since the request was made within our grace period, the refund was processed and credited back to her personal account on May 14th. "I see," I said, my heart leaping with satisfaction. "Is there any chance I could get a copy of the cancellation receipt? I want to make sure I have the correct details before I speak with David. Normally, we can only release financial documents to the primary account holder," the receptionist said hesitantly. I reached into my bag and pulled out my business card, along with a crisp $100 bill, sliding them quietly across the counter. "I completely understand. But as you can see, I work in corporate compliance. I just want to ensure my brother-in-law isn't being misled. A simple printed confirmation of the refund date and the account destination is all I need. I'd be happy to sponsor the Academy's upcoming charity drive as well." The receptionist looked at the bill, then at my card. She hesitated for a moment, before turning back to her screen. "Well, since you are family and it's just a confirmation of transaction." The printer behind her hummed to life. She slid a single sheet of paper across the counter. It was an official Elite Math Academy refund receipt. It clearly stated that the sum of $5,000 had been refunded to MasterCard ending in 4892, the card registered under the name Brenda Hayes, on May 14th. "Thank you so much," I said, smiling warmly. "You've been incredibly helpful." "Of course. I hope everything gets sorted out with the family." I walked out of the academy, my fingers gripping the paper tight. My next stop was my office, where I spent the afternoon compiling a comprehensive dossier. I logged onto VibeLive and printed out the public transaction history of Brenda_loves_life. The dates matched up with terrifying precision. May 14th, refund of $5,000 received by Brenda. May 15th, Brenda_loves_life gifts 3 super rockets, $1,500 value to Jax_fit. May 17th, Brenda_loves_life gifts 4 super rockets, $2,000 value to Jax_fit. May 19th, Brenda_loves_life gifts 3 super rockets, $1,500 value to Jax_fit. In the span of 5 days, the entire $5,000 meant for her sons' education had been completely liquidated and poured into the pockets of a webcam streamer. I put the documents into a sleek manila folder. The trap was fully loaded. All I needed now was for Brenda to pull the trigger. The opportunity came much faster than I anticipated. By the following afternoon, Brenda had escalated her campaign. She hadn't just kept the fight online. She had invited a local, sensationalist community blogger named Justice Joe, known for filming public confrontations and posting them for cheap clicks, to our building. At around 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mr. Jenkins, his voice trembling with anxiety. "Sophia, you need to come down to the second-floor community conference room right now. Brenda Hayes has brought a camera crew, her whole family, and several neighbors. She's demanding we evict you, and she's streaming the whole thing live. She says if you don't show up to sign a settlement, she's going to call the police and file formal assault charges for the garage incident." I smiled, feeling a cool rush of adrenaline. "Don't worry, Mr. Jenkins. Please let them know I will be down in 10 minutes. And please, make sure the room is unlocked and there are plenty of seats. This is going to be a very informative meeting." I stood up, adjusted my blazer, and picked up my manila folder and my laptop. I sent a quick text to my uncle. "It's time. Second floor community room. Bring the team." When I pushed open the double doors of the community room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The room was packed. At least 15 neighbors were sitting in the back rows, whispering excitedly. In the center of the room, a young man with a handheld stabilizer and a professional camera was live streaming. Beside him stood Justice Joe, holding a microphone, looking eager for drama. At the main conference table sat the Hayes trio. Brenda was in the center, her right ankle heavily wrapped in a thick, white ace bandage, resting dramatically. On a second chair, David sat to her left, looking grim and righteous, while Martha sat to her right, glaring at the door like a gargoyle. As I walked in, Justice Joe immediately pointed his microphone at me. And here she is, viewers. Sophia Miller, the woman accused of endangering a young child and refusing to take responsibility for a devastating medical diagnosis. Sophia, how do you respond to the allegations? I ignored him entirely, walking calmly to the opposite side of the table. I set my laptop down, placed my manila folder beside it, and sat down. Sophia, Brenda barked, her voice dripping with venomous triumph. You finally decided to show your face. I hope you brought your checkbook, because we are not leaving this room until you sign this admission of liability and transfer the $15,000. David chimed in, leaning forward. Sophia, we have the community watching. We have a live audience of over 5,000 people online. For your own sake, stop denying it. Sign the paper, pay the medical costs, and we can end this nightmare. I looked at Brenda, my face completely expressionless. Brenda, let me ask you one last time. Are you absolutely certain that this document, the one you posted online, the one you are using to demand $15,000 from me, is an authentic, legally binding medical assessment from the Blue Sky Children's Development Assessment Center? Brenda crossed her arms, raising her chin arrogantly. Of course it is. I have the official seal right here. It's signed by their lead specialist. Are you calling a state-certified medical institution a liar, Sophia? Or are you just trying to wiggle your way out of paying for my son's ruined brain? I see, I murmured. I stood up, walked over to the door, and opened it wide. In that case, I think we should get a professional opinion. 3 figures walked into the room. Leading the group was my uncle, Richard Miller, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his expression cold and imposing. Behind him were 2 younger men carrying briefcases, senior partners from the prestigious law firm Miller and Associates, which represented Blue Sky's corporate interests. The moment Richard entered, the atmosphere in the room shifted. His sheer presence radiated authority. Brenda frowned, her smug expression faltering slightly. Who are you? This is a private neighborhood matter. Get them out of here. Richard walked straight to the table, ignoring Brenda entirely. He picked up the copy of the assessment Brenda had laid out, glanced at it for a fraction of a second, and then tossed it back down with an expression of pure disgust. My name is Richard Miller, he announced, his voice booming through the quiet room. I am the founder, majority shareholder, and chief executive officer of the Blue Sky Children's Development Assessment Center. A collective gasp echoed from the neighbors in the back. Justice Joe quickly pivoted his camera, focusing entirely on Richard. Wait, the actual owner of the clinic? Brenda's face drained of color. She stared at Richard, her lips parting in silent horror. You're? This document, Richard said, pointing a sharp finger at the paper, is a fraudulent counterfeit. The seal is a cheap laser-etched duplicate. The registration number belongs to a 3-year-old pediatric speech file. And the signature of Dr. Eris Thorne is a forgery, as Dr. Thorne has not been employed by my institution for nearly 2 years. He turned to the camera, his eyes narrowing. Furthermore, the Blue Sky Center does not, and has never had, a diagnostic category for violent vehicle jolting. It is a scientific absurdity. This document was created with the sole intent to deceive, defraud, and extort. No, that's not true. Brenda stammered, her voice suddenly high and panicked. She grabbed David's arm. David, he's lying. He's her uncle. They're in this together. They're trying to cover it up. David looked bewildered, his eyes darting between Richard and his wife. Brenda, what is going on? You told me you went to the clinic yourself. You said you met with the director. She didn't. One of the lawyers stepped forward, pulling a document from his briefcase. We have already conducted an internal audit this morning. No child by the name of Leo Hayes has ever been registered in our database. We have already filed a formal criminal complaint with the state police for 3rd-degree forgery, criminal impersonation, and grand larceny by extortion. Extortion? David's voice shook. No, wait. We just wanted the medical costs covered. And then there's the matter of the garage, I said calmly. I turned to my laptop, which was connected to the room's large projector screen. and pressed play. The high-definition footage from the garage filled the screen. The neighbors leaned forward, murmuring. On the screen, my car drove past Brenda at a perfectly safe, slow speed. The camera clearly captured Brenda watching the car, carefully kicking off her high heels, stepping back, and then gently lowering herself to the floor to fake an injury. Laughter erupted from the back rows. "Oh my God, look at her!" one of the neighbors laughed. "She practically laid down a carpet before she fell." "She's a better actress than a mother," another whispered. Brenda's face turned from pale to a deep, embarrassed purple. She frantically tried to pull the ace bandage off her ankle, but it was too late. The livestream chat on Justice Joe's feed was scrolling so fast it was a blur of laughing emojis and angry comments. "You sham," Joe muttered, suddenly realizing he had been used for a fake story. He turned the camera directly into Brenda's face. "You lied to us. You faked the whole thing. Turn that off. Turn it off," Martha shrieked, throwing her hands up to block the lens. "But we aren't done yet," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Because the real question is, why did Brenda need $15,000 so desperately?" I opened the manila folder and projected the next set of documents onto the screen. Brenda claimed that Leo's grades plummeted because of my bumpy car. But the truth is much simpler. Leo's grades dropped because he was denied the academic support his father worked so hard to pay for. I pointed to the refund receipt from the Elite Math Academy. On May 12th, Brenda canceled Leo's enrollment and took a $5,000 cash refund. "David, did you know about this?" David stared at the screen, his face entirely blank, as if his brain was struggling to process the image of the refund receipt. No, she told me. The academy raised their prices, and that we needed to pay another $1,000 for the textbooks. I gave her more money. "Well, she didn't spend it on textbooks, David," I said softly. I clicked to the next slide, displaying the transaction logs of Brenda_loves_life on VibeLive, complete with the timestamps of her gifting. Super rockets to Jax_fit. She spent every single cent of your son's tuition money, exactly $5,000, tipping a 22-year-old fitness streamer named Jax. The room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Even Justice Joe stopped talking, his jaw hanging open. Then I pressed play on a short video clip. It was a screen recording of Jax's live stream from May 17th. On the screen, the handsome, tanned young man blew a kiss to the camera. "Oh my gosh, Goddess Brenda. Another super rocket? You are literally my savior. You make my heart beat so fast, babe. I love you so much." David slowly turned his head to look at his wife. The quiet, hard-working accountant looked like a man who had just watched his entire life crumble to dust in a single second. His hands were trembling, his knuckles white. "David," Brenda whispered, her voice cracking, tears finally spilling over her heavy makeup. "David, please, it was an investment. I was going to help him start a gym. We were going to make money." "You stole from our son," David said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "No, I didn't. You took the money I worked 80 hours a week for." David's voice rose, cracking with raw, unadulterated pain. "The money for Leo's future. You threw it away on a boy toy, and then you tried to ruin our neighbor's life to cover up your disgusting lies." "David, please. Shut up," David roared, slamming his fist onto the table so hard the water bottles jumped. Martha, finally realizing what her daughter-in-law had done, let out a screech of fury. She didn't care about the cameras or the neighbors. She lunged across the table, her bony fingers clawing at Brenda's face. "You shameless, lying harlot," Martha screamed. "You ruined my grandson's life. You stole our money. Get off me, you crazy old hag," Brenda shrieked, grabbing Martha's hair. Within seconds, the community room descended into a full-scale, physical brawl. Brenda and Martha were screaming and tearing at each other's clothes while David sat in his chair, his head buried in his hands, weeping openly. Justice Joe was having the time of his life, his camera capturing every second of the family's violent meltdown. Just then, the heavy doors of the community room swung open once more. 4 uniformed police officers walked in, led by a stern-faced detective. They took in the scene of the screaming women and immediately stepped in to separate them. The detective walked over to my Uncle Richard. "Mr. Miller, we received your complaint regarding the forged documents and the attempted extortion." Richard pointed calmly to Brenda, who was being held back by an officer, her makeup smeared, her hair a wild, tangled mess. "That is the woman, officer. She has publicly used a forged seal of my institution to extort $15,000 from my niece. And as you can see from the live broadcast, she has also committed insurance fraud." The detective nodded, turning to Brenda. "Brenda Hayes, you are under arrest for grand larceny by extortion, forgery, and filing a false report." Please put your hands behind your back. As the cold steel handcuffs clicked around Brenda's wrists, she looked at me. Through the crowd. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of terror, hatred, and absolute defeat. Sophia, she screamed as she was dragged toward the door. You did this. You ruined my family. You monster. I stood up, slowly packing my laptop and my folder into my bag. No, Brenda, I said, my voice calm and perfectly clear. You did this to yourself. I just made sure everyone was watching. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood was quieter than it had been in years. Brenda's arrest had been the talk of the town, especially after Justice Joe's live stream went viral, garnering over 3 million views. The shame was too much for the Hayes family to bear. David had filed for emergency divorce and full custody of Leo the very next morning, with the evidence of Brenda's financial abuse and the criminal charges against her. The judge had granted David exclusive occupancy of the apartment and stripped Brenda of any marital assets. She was left with nothing, no money, no home, and a pending criminal trial that would likely end in prison time. Martha had packed her bags and moved back to her home state, unable to face the whispers of the neighbors in the lobby. As for Leo, my Uncle Richard had personally arranged a full scholarship for him at the Blue Sky Center's private tutoring program. Without his mother's toxic influence, the boy was already showing massive improvement, his grades steadily climbing back to where they belonged. On a quiet Friday evening, I walked down to the underground garage. The musty smell was still there, but the air felt lighter, cleaner. I unlocked my car, got into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The 300 horsepower motor let out its familiar, powerful roar echoing smoothly off the concrete walls. I shifted into gear, backed out of my spot, and drove toward the exit. As I crested the ramp and drove into the warm evening sunlight, I smiled. The ride was perfectly smooth.